celebrating the women in our lives this morning. And last week was huge for me in doing this, celebrating some of the women in my life. My 25-year-old daughter, Sophia, was married to the man she loves. It was a beautiful moment for me and for her mother, Laura. And as part of my father of the bride speech, I shared the following story with her new husband, Travis. It was a story accompanied with a gift, a 20-pound bag of dirt. But not just any bag of dirt. It was from Crater of Diamonds State Park in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. People go there to dig for diamonds. There really are diamonds in that dirt. If you find those diamonds, you get to keep them. So the story is that one day, around 15 years ago, Laura and Sophia happened to be watching a television show, and they happened to see something about Crater of Diamonds State Park, and there was electricity in the room. An idea soon formed in their minds. The ladies like diamonds. So I find out later that we're going on a road trip. We are going to some place in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. And then we're going to camp the night, and then the next day we're going to come back home. We're going to find us some diamonds. So after setting up camp, we drove over to the state park, and just as we pulled in, the sky, full of nasty-looking clouds, just started to pour down buckets. But nothing was going to stop us now. We scrounged up some raincoats. We got out there. We braved the rain because diamonds. Sophia's raincoat was a pure, elegant white. Pure white. I remember pausing during a frantic spell of digging in the muck and the mire, pausing and looking across the Crater of Diamonds, a real crater, to see Sophia digging furiously, and she is totally oblivious to how her pure white coat is now the color of Arkansas mud. At some point, our fever lust for diamonds broke. And we were grimy, and we were soaked and soiled to the skin, and we were treated back to our campsite only to find that it had collapsed under the force of the rain. Nearly a foot of water was in the tent. We had a moment where we just looked at each other silently because what do you say to ridiculousness? The lunch Laura had planned was totally ruined, but Laura could always make a way out of no way. I've always appreciated her for it, even though we're no longer together. Laura pulled something together, and shivering, we gobbled it down. The tent was demolished, it was hopeless, and we just decided to abandon it and go home. We did, and I have to say, I was not fun to be around in this whole thing. The whole thing seemed to me to have been one major disaster. Sophia and Laura were giggling about the diamonds, and I was not giggling about the diamonds. I was in my cranky place. And then something turned. I'll never forget it. I saw myself being cranky, and I realized that I was totally missing what was happening. The crazy rain, Sophia's white-turned Arkansas brown coat, her and Laura digging in the muck like mad, Laura's makeshift lunch, our hopeless tent, which we abandoned, Laura and Sophia giggling. It's then I realized that this had actually been the very best road trip that I'd ever been on. And this is going to be a story that needed to be shared again and again and again. This was the diamond that I found at Crater of Diamonds State Park in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. And my crankiness faded away, and we all had the best time driving back home in the rain and in the dark. And I shared this story with Travis because it was a way of celebrating two women who have been and are so important to me in my life. The experience I had with my own mother was traumatic. It was filled with violence. So to have witnessed Laura's mothering, the quality of it was incredibly healing for me. As for my daughter, the great choices she's made, the dreams she has, I just love her so much. So I want to ask you, what stories might you share today, on this day, this Mother's Day, that celebrate the women in your life, the mothers and the grandmothers, the wives and the partners, the daughters, the cisgender women and transgender women, mentors, hero figures, and any others? To know the stories is to celebrate. To know the stories is to begin to know women's reality and to honor it. And in particular, all the ways in which women continually make a way out of no way. I was speaking to a friend the other day about her experience of being a mother and was very moved by her story. When I first had my child, she says, I wasn't prepared for the depth of the changes that occurred. Giving up my body and life energy completely in the service of another human being who relied on me completely was intense. For several years, I was only mom. That was my new identity. It was emotionally and physically draining. Eventually, she says, I remembered that I was also a person. Eventually, I learned to spend time on myself as well as my children. Now, I am the old me, the mom, and I am the new me. My friend concludes, the struggles and responsibilities of motherhood are ever present. They don't go away. I still have to keep my children alive and fed and comforted and loved and supported, but I don't drown in it anymore. It's the same as having a rough day, though. Some days are just harder than others. It was so moving to hear all of this. The intensity, even as the joy is there, the satisfaction is there. There's so much to the story of what it means to be a mother. But now, what happens when a woman dares to go off script and to be different from motherly? It's in the nevertheless she persisted variety. That's what I'm talking about. What's that story all about? And when I say off script, I'm thinking about PBS NewsHour reporter Daniel Bush and his article entitled The Hidden Sexism That Could Sway the Presidential Election. Obviously, this article was written before Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. He's trying to make sense of a phenomenon of men and women who insisted that they are not sexist, but they also feel very uncomfortable with the thought of a female president. At one point in his article, Daniel Bush quotes psychology professor Terry Vecchio, who says, the more female politicians are seen as striving for power, the less they are trusted, and the more moral outrage gets directed at them. Violate gender norms, refuse to throw like a woman, or take back that phrase and make it good and proud, a good and proud thing. Well, and it's like stepping on a hill of red ants. It's like poking a stick at a beehive. Hillary Clinton, she dared to go off script. And what happened is another one of those stories we all need to know to honor woman's reality. Persistence in the face of adversity, which is not necessarily an adversity of outright hatred, although there was plenty of that too. You probably recall that from the campaign. Now, this is something that Amanda Hess, writing in Slate, explores. She says, a new review of studies on discrimination by the University of Washington's Tony Greenwald and UC Santa Cruz's Thomas Pettigrew makes the succinct case that discrimination in the United States is not primarily a product of overt hatred for others, but rather a simple preference for people like ourselves. In a review of 5 decades of psychological research, they found that while most researchers define prejudice as an expression of hostility, the more pervasive form of bigotry in the United States comes from people who favor, admire, and trust people of their own race and gender and age and religion or parenting status. Even people who share the same birthday can catch a break Even that kind of similarity feels good. This means that, just to take one example, sexist bias isn't largely perpetuated by people who hate women. It's furthered by men who just particularly like other men. That's Amanda Hess. And what's really powerful about this insight is how it dismantles what common sense holds about sexism or racism or ableism and on and on and on. That they are principally about hatred. To be sexist is to feel hatred towards women. No, that's not it. This is not so. Your sexism can be benevolent. That's a term that researchers use to oppose it to the hostile form of the hostile variety. You can be a man. You can open doors for your wife. You can feel tender towards her. But when she asserts herself in a way that doesn't feel very feminine in the more traditional sense, there's backlash. You can be a woman and witness the outrageous disrespect that he who shall not be named, you know who I'm talking about, the outrageous disrespect that he who shall not be named showed over and over again towards people of your same gender, and you still voted for him, as the majority of white women did in this country. Did you know that? The majority of white women voted for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton put herself out there in the line of fire, and she is a hero. Next generations of women will succeed in ways she was not able to because of her. And Hillary Clinton is not the only hero. Every woman is. Statistics say that at least 1 out of every 3 women around the world has been beaten, coerced into sex, or otherwise abused in her lifetime, with the abuser usually someone known to her. Just listen to that story. The patriarchal world is dangerous to women like my daughter. And women are hurting, and yet they keep showing up to their lives. They keep showing up to their relationships. They keep on mothering when they themselves may be hurting. We keep on fighting a slow fight for dignity and equality and respect. And we do it in a country where the current sitting president once bragged during a conversation with an Access Hollywood host that he could grab women without their permission. This is a man who was accused by 11 women before the election of inappropriately touching or kissing them. To all women living in this world, thank you for persisting. In a speech where she addresses Trump bragging about sexually assaulting women and the rest of it, Michelle Obama said, "The shameful comments about our bodies, the disrespect of our ambitions and intellect, it is cruel, it's frightening. And the truth is, it hurts. It hurts. It's like that sick, sinking feeling you get when you're walking down the street minding your own business and some guy yells out vulgar words about your body. It's that feeling of terror and violation that too many women have felt when someone has grabbed them or forced themselves upon them. And they've said no, but they didn't listen. Something that we know happens on college campuses all the time, countless other spaces all the time, every single day. It reminds us of stories we heard from our mothers and our grandmothers about how back in their day, the boss could say and do whatever they wanted to, whatever he pleased to the women in the office, even though they worked so hard and jumped so many hoops in order to prove themselves. And it was never enough. We thought all of that was ancient history, didn't we? And so many of us have worked for so many years to end this kind of violence and abuse and disrespect. But here we are in 2016, and we're hearing the exact same things every day on this campaign trail. We are drowning in it. And all of us are doing what women have always done. We're trying to keep our heads above the water, just trying to get through it. Trying to pretend like this doesn't really bother us because maybe we think that admitting how much it hurts us will make us look weak. And then Michelle says this: in our hearts, we all know that if we let Hillary's opponent win this election, then we are sending a clear message to our kids that everything they are seeing and hearing is perfectly okay. We are validating it. We are endorsing it. We're telling our sons that it is okay to humiliate women. We're telling our daughters that this is how they deserve to be treated. We're telling all our kids that bigotry and bullying are perfectly acceptable in the leader of their country. Is that what we want for our children? It is so hard to hear this speech by Michelle Obama post-election. It's so hard to hear it because, you know, the clear message did get sent, didn't it? It got sent. Now, I know there's lots more we could say about the election. Clinton had all sorts of problems, but this piece is unavoidable. Feels just like I'm back at Crater of Diamonds, and the rain is just pouring down, and I am miserable, and we are miserable. We are up to our eyeballs in the muck and the mud. But then I think about how the diamonds are really there, somehow there, somewhere there. And what is required is persistence. Nevertheless, she persisted. Persistence. You just keep looking. We're here today to fight the good fight, feminist women and feminist men together. And we're sending a counter message. And we're going to win this one, however long it lasts, however long it takes. The Women's March in Washington was the largest single-day protest in U.S. history. Did you know that? 1 Billion Rising has organized millions around the world, including our flash mob dancers here among us today, to defy the injustices that women regularly suffer, to break the chain, to proclaim, this is my body. My body is holy. No more excuses, no more abuses. We are mothers. We are teachers. We are beautiful, beautiful creatures. Run like a girl can mean win the race. As men and women, perhaps we should start by speaking softly. The women must learn to dare to speak. The men must learn to bother, to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. The men must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling. All the work to eradicate sexism in our personal relationships and in our families, in our workplaces, in legislation and law, and more. All the learning and the unlearning. If we are going to celebrate the women in our lives, truly, well, let's do it like this. Amen. Thank you.